The following session thematically links straight into this multifaceted topic and revolves around the currency of the 21st century, data. Each of us comes into contact with a stream of different data on a daily basis. For example, we use real-time data to navigate to work faster in rush hour traffic, or use the power of the Internet of Things to monitor our smart home on the go. But in the age of social networks, each of us also generates a lot of data, some of it very personal. This gives rise to a wide range of questions. So, what exactly happens to this data? To whom and to which company is it passed on? And is this data protected? But above all, who benefits from it? Our next speaker is a world-leading expert who has always been ahead of his time in analyzing data-driven socioeconomic phenomena. In this talk, he will reveal how all citizens can self-sovereign identity to become masters of their own digital selves again. Don Tapscott is not only a longtime friend and speaker at DLD, but also CEO of the Tapscott Group, associate professor in INSEAD, the co-founder of the Blockchain Research Institute, and beyond this all, he is a successful author of several books. His latest work is titled The Supply Chain Revolution. Now, let's welcome to the DLD All-Star stage, Don Tapscott.
Well, thank you very much. And hello from a lake house in northern Canada. I'd much rather be with you all in Munich. And my relationship with DLD goes back many years, a couple of decades, probably. And I've had very memorable experiences at every one of the events, typically pre-Davos events. But I've also spoken in other cities. I remember the last time I was in Munich. It was just a wonderful session. I ended up staying up very late with some dear friends, but maybe next year. Anyway, I'd like to talk to you about something I think is a big deal, that just as turning the tide on climate change is a prerequisite for our survival as a human race, I'm convinced that the foundation for the survival of human civilization in the digital age is that we need to recapture our digital identities. And this is not what you think it's about. It's about something much bigger, because without us reclaiming our identities, there can be no prosperity, security, autonomy of the individual, and no freedom. And as a researcher, an entrepreneur, educator, and a change agent, this is my number one passion today. And let me start with just an example. The spread of the global pandemic and our ineptitude to deal with it had a lot to do with data, or lack thereof. Clinicians, epidemiologists, government authorities, and others from the get-go have been working in the dark, and there was virtually no testing in the early weeks of the outbreak in most Western countries, and people who were sick. There was something new. There was no way of capturing that. We lacked early warning systems. And today, critical medical records and data are locked up in the silos of hospitals and various other healthcare institutions and private companies and so on. And the data crisis reflects a much bigger problem. Data is created by us, in the case of health data, by our own bodies, but we don't own it. And we can't use it. We can't share it for societal purposes. We can't protect it. And imagine if our healthcare records were owned by us in a self-sovereign healthcare identity. What would that look like? Well, to begin, we'd all own our digital health records to provide pertinent health information that may help with the treatment. We're generating real-time data from our bodies today. Our heart rate could be our temperature, all kinds of other things. And every time we interact with the healthcare system, data gets collected. We could own that data in a sovereign health record. And then, say during a pandemic, there could be rules in societies, part of a new social contract, where there was state-mandated availability of anonymized civilian data or citizen data about critical health information. So you're not going to give up your private healthcare record to the state, but anonymized data that could be enormously helpful. We could also have incentive systems to make private data available to appropriate clinicians and government planners. And as a result, we would have the actual data of an entire population could become available in a way that protects our privacy, but helps us solve a big social problem like a pandemic health problem. And in fact, once we're immunized, a health certification could be attached to that identity, which could help us open up the global economy, get through borders, and move around more freely, and try and reboot the global economy. So health data is one of hundreds of examples of data that we create, but we don't own. Now, let me step back and just give you a little personal background on all of this for me. I wrote a couple of books in the 1980s that nobody read, actually. I think my mother bought most of the copies. They were kind of like studies in bad timing. But I started writing bestsellers in the early 1990s. Paradigm Shifts, obviously a big book. And in 94, 95, I wrote The Digital Economy. And that was the first bestseller about the web and business, as they say. And 20 years later, I had to write the anniversary edition of the book, and I had to reflect on what had occurred. And while I was very upbeat and optimistic about the digital age, I also came to the conclusion that there were a bunch of problems. And one of them that I wrote extensively about was what is going to happen to our data. And I said our privacy could be undermined in an irrevocable way. Now, a couple of years later, I got together with a friend of mine, Ann Kavukian, and we wrote a book called Privacy in the Network World. I think my mom bought most of the copies of this one too, because people said to me and Ann, like, privacy? I don't get it. What's the problem? And Ann, pertinent to the previous conversation here, went on to invent the concept of privacy by design. I wrote the foreword to the book where she invented that. So this is an issue that I've cared about for a long time, but I guess there's nothing so powerful as an idea whose time has come again. And here we are entering fully into the digital age. And just as under feudalism, the key asset class was land and people created produce. Under the industrial age, the key asset class was industrial plant. Under the digital age, the key asset class is data. And unfortunately, the way the data gets created is by us, but we not only don't have access to it, we don't own it. And the virtual Steffi knows more about Steffi than she does. All kinds of barriers. She doesn't know what she bought a year ago, her exact location a year ago, what she said a year ago, what medication she took, what diagnosis she had. And Steffi creates this virtual image of herself, a mirror image, as we called it in the book in 1996. But that image is captured by governments and fundamentally by a new species of business. Now, again, a little history. In 2006, I dubbed this new species of business, we called it a digital conglomerate. And we said that we've never seen anything like this. These are companies that can enter into all kinds of adjacent or not adjacent industries because they own the asset class of the digital age. And flash forward to today, you can see that playing out. Look at this. It's a handful of companies that dominate the NASDAQ 100. 20% of the S&P 500 is owned by five companies. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, and Facebook. And this is a big problem, but it's a problem for reasons that people don't normally talk about. First of all this data would be enormously useful to us to help us plan our lives. Think about if you had access to your real-time health record, how that could be just so useful. We can't monetize the data. The digital conglomerates are monetizing it, and there's, as a result, a bifurcation of wealth. This is causing what we call a prosperity paradox. That prior to the pandemic, and this will occur after, the economy is growing, but the middle class is shrinking. We have wealth creation, we have declining prosperity, because the asset of the digital age is being captured by a handful of companies. Our data is not secure. There's two types of these central servers that these things run on, those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. And our privacy is being undermined, as the previous session talked about. Now, people say to me, well, come on, Don, privacy is dead. Get over it. You got nothing to hide. What's your problem? This is stupidity. Privacy is the foundation of freedom, and we need to get our digital identities back so that we can manage them responsibly for ourselves. And the other problem is the data can't be used for societal purposes, like, say, in a pandemic. We need to solve this problem. It's not just about privacy anymore. This is about the freedom, autonomy, and security of the individual. It's about our prosperity. And without this, there can be no broad prosperity in society and the collective action that we can take. You know, Jared Lanier at Davos last year made the case that there are close to 1.5 billion people that they had access to their data would double their income. These are big, big issues. So what if, as part of a social contract, was the topic of my last speech at DLD, what if each of us had our own self-sovereign identity, secured, where it moved around with us? And that identity, that digital identity, was sweeping up this exhaust of all this data that we're constantly generating as we go throughout life. All kinds of rich data that we could use to plan our lives, and we could monetize the data. We could protect our security and our prosperity. What an extraordinary idea that would be. Now, just to be clear here, this is not about identification. Often when people think about identity, they think about you are who you are. That's a big part of it. And of course, our government data and our identity data and related data, like, say, whether or not we've had a vaccine in a pandemic, is pertinent. But identification is just the tip of the identity iceberg. Citizens need something much bigger. They need a self-sovereign identity for all of their data, that thing that represents the mirror image of ourselves in the digital age, and that is the foundation of prosperity and freedom. Now, how are we going to get there? Well, it turns out that part of the solution lies in the technology. The digital age is entering a second era. Throughout that period of 40 years that I described to you, we've gone through a first era: mainframes, mini computers, PCs, the internet, the web, social media, the mobile web, the cloud, and big data. Now we're entering a second era where technology infuses itself into the physical world. Things need identities. Not just that you can identify them, but when that light bulb starts doing transactions, it pays for the transaction from, say, a distributed power source, its reputation as a trustworthy device will be enhanced. It will have an identity. We also have technology that learns to do things that they weren't previously programmed to do, machine learning and so on. Energy is becoming distributed. Technology is in our bodies. And the foundational technology, in my mind, and some of you have heard me say this, is the underlying technology of cryptocurrencies, blockchain. It's the second era of the internet. For 40 years, we've had an internet of information. Now we're getting an internet of value, where anything of value, from money, securities, intellectual property, art, music, votes, or say the data in our identity, can be managed, stored, communicated, transacted in a secure and private way, peer-to-peer. In this world, trust is not achieved by a middleman who captures our data. It's achieved by cryptography and collaboration and some very clever code, which is why we call it the Internet of Value, the trust protocol. So this is exciting. Maybe that holds some opportunities. Now, what about government? Is there a role for government? Well, we have GDPR, and government is there to take actions to protect our privacy. But this is much, much bigger than privacy, isn't it? And GDPR, while necessary, is woefully insufficient as a set of laws and a governance framework to deal with this problem. What we need is something much bigger. Now, I wanted to share with you a report that we just wrote for President Biden and Vice President Harris. And it's about and available for you at Blockchain Research Institute on how the United States could be the first country, if it wanted to go way beyond GDPR and this kind of privacy protection, to the leadership in creating a self-sovereign identity. And to close up, just some other things about how are we going to get there. My colleague, Tim Berners-Lee, you may remember, invented the web. He has proposed a framework called Solid, and it's an open source platform, a set of web-based protocols that re-architects how data is stored and shared, and as a consequence, how apps are developed. And Solid is led by Tim. It's based on existing web standards, and it operates separate from the apps and the data. Whichever app a user runs, it stores data in the user's personal online data store, or pod. And Solid has a commercial implementation that Tim's a partner of called Inrupt. And that's one approach to solving this problem. Then we have blockchain solutions as well. So Sovereign is the world's only really public utility for trusted self-sovereign identity that uses blockchain. And like the Internet of Information, it's not owned by anyone. Everyone can use it and improve on it. And it is based on blockchain technology. Any person, organization, or thing can actually own their own digital identity, not just control it. Any person, organization, or thing can instantly verify the authenticity of claims, including who or what someone claims to be. And it ensures privacy, how information is shared without added risk of correlation and without creating troves of breachable data. Now, there are private implementations of this. One is called Everin. And when you work with Everin, you work with a huge decentralized community and a company that has expertise in that space. By the way, I have no vested interest in any of these companies I'm talking about. And they use cryptography, privacy, blockchain, and new governance frameworks. And this actually came from the folks who developed Hyperledger Indy and also the Sovereign Network and Sovereign Foundation. There are others, Uports from Ethereum. And it allows users to register their own identity, send credentials, sign transactions, and securely manage their data, all using the Ethereum blockchain. IDEX, it's a Fujitsu product that enables safe exchange and use of ID information to deliver better services, but it goes beyond ID into this world of self-sovereign identity. The IEEE is involved too. They had a big conference last year, and I opened the thing up. And I was, in my research, I was surprised to learn about the dozens of working groups on blockchain that are underway in the IEEE. And there are also bottom-up initiatives. The University Health Network in Toronto, the third biggest hospital network in the world, according to Newsweek, has a blockchain-based program that enables the owners or the people that interact with the hospital and have a healthcare record to give permissions for researchers to use that data anonymized and under certain circumstances. Now, before you leave UHN after your x-ray, your radiology report is in your identity. You have full access to it. Next step there would be that you own it. You can monetize it, sell it, I get a second opinion, give it to research. You own your data. And we're involved with some initiatives to try and help achieve this in a bottom-up way, where we, starting with a patient record, because this is not going to come about because the UN's going to declare that we need a self-sovereign identity. It's going to be top-down, bottom-up, diagonal, sideways, and so on. And imagine if we had this blockchain-based patient record, conduct a pilot, and then we link it to pharmacies and e-prescribing systems, link it to other entities in the healthcare network, and then start to get local governments to bundle in other data like driver's license data and other Visa or a MasterCard to bring in transaction data, and we could move in that direction. How about the role of the digital conglomerates themselves? Well, surely they're the enemy, aren't they? Well, maybe not. I mean, Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, has been very strong saying that users need to have access to their data, protect their data, and he's bordering on saying users should own their data. This Microsoft's the second most valuable company in the world. So I'd like to close with a letter that I've written for Mark Zuckerberg to send to all Facebook users. Dear Facebook users, we built our company on the notion that we own your data, and that worked well for years. But we now understand this is not viable nor the right thing to do. You'll see a new Facebook soon where the data you create is owned and controlled by you. We will purchase this data from you, and we'll build a new business founded on integrity. This will hurt our revenue and stock price initially, but ultimately enable us to create a more sustainable and successful company for the years ahead. Stay tuned, Mark. So, Mark, if you're on the line, no problem. You can have the letter, no charge. So, to close, this is a new paradigm that I'm talking about. And when you get a new paradigm, these things are a mental model. They put boundaries around what we think. They constrain our actions, often based on assumptions that are so strong we don't know that they're there. The Earth is at the center of the universe. The big problem in the world is communism. Remember that one? The purpose of computers is to automate existing business processes. Data is owned by intermediaries, governments, large corporations. And something can happen in art, science, culture, technology, whatever, that causes a change to occur. The global pandemic has brought this issue to the fore around health data, and now is the time to find the leadership for change, and that's what's needed. Because when you get a new paradigm, vested interests fight against change. These things cause dislocation, confusion, or they're often received badly, with mockery or worse. And because vested interests fight against change, leaders of old paradigms have great difficulty embracing the new. No matter where you are or what you are, a government leader, a leader of a large technology company, a leader in a civil society organization, or a technology entrepreneur, now is the time to do this. And is it possible? Is it achievable? I think this is one of those things we have to do. Like climate change, can we turn back the tide on that? It's not can we do it, it's something we need to do.
Thank you, Don. I'm so sorry. It's such an interesting topic, and it's so important what you're saying. We're very honored, but we have to move on with our program. So I'm very sorry.
I'm done.
But we're very thankful to have you with us. So it's really an honor.
And Don, I take the occasion to thank you so much. Also, I'm as Philly just said, you're so a great talker, great speaker. You're so generous with your ideas, with your prospects, with your analogies. You're really an inspirational friend of us since many years. And the success of, here I am. The success of DLD is also your success. Thank you so much, Dan. You make a difference. And you
See you
know,
soon.
we have a friend, his name is Dominic Briggs, and he's very
Right.
much in awe of you. And we help him to get his things done. Thank
Well,
you
thank
for
you,
helping
because
him.
he's
Good.
the CEO of our organization in Europe now.
I know he's a wonderful, bright young man, and we like him. Thank you for coaching him. Thank you for
Thank you.
inspiring him. Ciao. Thank you,
Bye.
Don. And Don, hey, can I see Don? Don, we have to see us in Munich. We have to work with Vivian Redding and Stefan Filzmeier on the data thing. We have to do a paper
Let's do
together.
Let's do this.
Yes, let's do this.
know?
See you
Okay.
soon. Ciao. Bye.
Bye.